Zen and the Art of Remaining Awake, Part 3, the 30th of December 2020. In 1876, Chief Red Cloud, the leader of the Sioux nations, summoned a gathering of elders to deliberate, discuss, and determine his best response to the American government's seizure of the Black Hills, a mountain range in South Dakota that had been pledged to him and his people at the Treaty of Fort Laramie just 8 years earlier. Their debates, though long, grave, and watered with tears, bore no fruit. 63 years later, in 1927, 400 stonemasons gathered in those same stolen Black Hills and gazed up to marvel at the granite features of Mount Rushmore, after which they began 14 years of dangerous, highly skilled work. Their dream was realized. Into that soaring granite face they chiseled 4 colossal 60-foot-high carvings of Presidents Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Lincoln. Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy, plagued with weak eyesight since childhood, stares through thick glasses, his gaze forever fixed on Lincoln's profile. America's youngest ever president, Teddy, was only 42 when, in 1901, following the assassination of President William McKinley, he swore a sincere oath. "I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." A workaholic, the 26th President had this to say about armchair critics: "To sit at home and read one's favourite paper and scoff at the misdeeds of men who actually do things is easy, but it's markedly ineffective." He was right. It's not enough to rail against politicians' mishandling of their responsibilities. One must try somehow to influence them. The first letter I wrote to a politician is now more than 40 years old. Addressed to Margaret Thatcher, I wrote it as a first-time parent, horrified when pushing my daughter's pram along streets where cars belched lead-laced fumes. I implored her to ban the unnecessary addition of that toxin to petrol. Surely she, as a parent and a scientist, recognized the need for immediate action. Her degree in chemistry alone would have alerted her to the fact that lead is a neurotoxin and that it accumulates particularly in children, particularly those nose-high to exhaust fumes in their prams and strollers, irreparably damaging hearts, kidneys, and brains. I received no reply. The second was addressed to Neil Kinnock, an aspiring Prime Minister, begging him to commit the Labour Party to reforming our first-past-the-post electoral voting system, as it had entrenched the Conservatives in power for most of the 20th century. I received no reply. The third was addressed to Paddy Ashdown, another aspiring Prime Minister, to do something, whatever he could, about Margaret Thatcher's refusal to ban the trade of ivory to Hong Kong. Unbelievable! A reply! Thank you for your recent letter. Like you, I am horrified that the government is refusing to enforce the ivory ban in Hong Kong. I can assure you that I am totally opposed and will make my opposition known at any suitable opportunity. Thank you for writing. Paddy Ashdown briefly restored my faith in politicians. However, It was not until 2018, 30 years after I raised my pen, that blood-stained trade route was finally sealed. How many elephant corpses rotted in the interim? And what does that stench indicate about humankind's ability to respond at speed to the impending climate catastrophe? Finally, a letter written in 2009 and addressed to Michelle Obama shortly after she entered the White House as its first ever black First Lady. My plea was expressed formally, but this was its gist. You, Michelle, want what's best for your girls, as the First Lady, you also want what's best for America's children. A first-rate education surely must rank near the top of your priorities. Yet you know that, unfortunately, in too many of America's states, Darwin's theory of natural selection is under attack from an anti-science brigade that would have us believe that we, you and I, don't share a familial ancestry with every other form of life on this planet. This being 2009, the bicentenary of Darwin's birth, the BBC has produced a documentary to mark this special occasion. Charles Darwin and the Tree of Life is narrated by Sir David Attenborough. Would it not be an excellent idea to follow a precedent set by Tony Blair's government when copies of Al Gore's film, An Inconvenient Truth, were distributed to every English secondary school? Michelle, support the First Amendment. Ensure that Attenborough's voice and all that it represents is heard loud and clear in each of your 50 states. Charles Darwin and the Tree of Life can do nothing but illumine minds and advance the cause of rational scientific inquiry. I received no reply. I don't suppose the First Lady received my letter, any more than did Kinnock or Thatcher. Somewhere down the line, my dreams were tossed into bins. Can I ensure these words I now speak don't suffer a similar fate? I am tempted to placate a supernatural being, as is customary before journeys of discovery. Close your eyes, relax, and picture the scene. You're a seagull wheeling above the Mediterranean. You're heading west for the setting sun. Along to your right-hand wing side speeds one of Spain's pristine golden beaches. You climb higher. The wind is buffeting your breast. It's the 3rd of August, 1492, which means nothing to you. All you know is that the tide has turned and that the sun will presently sink. You swoop low as you near a harbour and spot 3 ships, their sails swollen, pregnant with possibility. Hoping to take advantage of a careless fisherman, you circle and spot on the shore a small crowd, some on their knees. A man is raising his arms as if summoning God's blessing for another man who, with his crew, look ready to row to one of those ships. Curious, you keep watching and notice that the priest and those well-wishers are still muttering prayers even as the anchor rattles aboard. In 5 weeks' time, after circling 2 uninhabited islands, a rowing boat will quench its speed on the slushy sands of Cuba. There a flag will be plunged into a beach, and Columbus and his men will sink to their knees to thank Mary and her son for their safe deliverance. Like Columbus, I too sail into uncharted waters, finding I can only appeal to Jupiter's firstborn, the goddess Fortuna. So to you I turn, Fortuna, you who carry the cornucopia of abundance, pour your fruit on me. Grant me sufficient time, energy, and skill to keep this craft afloat until this journey ends, wherever that may be. Additionally, enable me to map every significant incident experienced and every historic shoreline skirted as accurately as possible. I'll begin with a TV programme I've only just watched, a show supposedly drawing our attention to the most significant events and trends of the last 2 decades, presented by Stephen Fry. 21st Century Firsts nevertheless had such a frothy feel that Brexit, the financial crisis, and 9/11 got as much airtime as stories concerning the introduction of coffee shops and a reminder of that viral YouTube clip of Charlie biting his brother's finger. At one point, Fry expressed his misgivings about the social media revolution. But, he lamented, you can't stuff that genie back in the bottle. Even though a world without Facebook, Twitter and Instagram now seems immensely appealing. No doubt he's thinking of how demagogues control their minions. The power of mass communications was realized in the 1930s by Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, who led a campaign to build a radio cheap enough for even the poorest of workers. Today the power of Twitter is unimaginable, for ill as well as for good. Yet I recall how enthusiastically Fry greeted its launch. Back then even its name delighted him, conjuring, as it does, a dawn chorus. Twitter. 2 moments in the show made an impact. The first was when Fry looked me straight in the eye and said, "Graphene will change everything. Imagine electrically powered jumbo jets made of the stuff." Graphene is 100% carbon and was discovered in 2004 when a scientist rubbed his pencil across Scotch tape. Though just an atom thick, it is 200 times stronger than steel and 6 times lighter. As Greta Thunberg is a trendsetter Fry advises me to watch, I envisage the paradise he's conjuring. A brave, beautiful new world in which we can have our cake and eat it, where we can keep flying to Cuba or Kerala or California, safe in the knowledge that we're being propelled by solar power. The second impactful item came at the end of the show, when Fry, looking at once world-weary and hopeful, raised a flute of champagne to toast the new year. "We're approaching," he said, "the 21st year of the 21st century. Surely a coming of age." His remark reminded me of one of my mother's favourite books. Published the year I was born, in 1953, Childhood's End is a science fiction novel by Arthur C. Clarke, which depicts the peaceful invasion of Earth by overlords. The aliens arrived just in time to save humanity from its own stupidity, and under their stewardship, the planet experiences a utopia. Clarke's message is alarming. Only the intervention of an alien intelligence can save us from our moral turpitude. One passage in the book well illustrates this. The overlords have ordered the Spanish government to outlaw bullfighting. This it refuses to do. However, legislation is swiftly enacted once the aliens so heighten humankind's empathetic imagination that those packed into bull rings experience not only the bull's terror, but their pain as well. My mother, a humanist feminist, despised small talk and had a reputation for being outspoken. Ever alert to misogyny, she would not have been surprised by an item in today's news. In Saudi Arabia, Loujain al-Hathloul has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Al-Hathloul is Saudi Arabia's Rosa Parks, a woman who feels she has the right to sit anywhere she chooses on a bus, even behind its wheel. At the root of her treatment is her refusal to accept that men are superior to women. Since 2018, women have been allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia, but Al-Hathloul remains under arrest. According to Amnesty International, she and several others have been beaten and waterboarded. Her parents reported that her thighs were blackened by the bruises when they visited her, that she was shaking uncontrollably and unable to walk or even sit normally. My mother would have asked, what the hell is wrong with men? Why do they feel the need to control women? Are they emotionally retarded? She was voicing a concern expressed more vehemently by Margaret Atwood. Men are afraid that women will laugh at them. Women are afraid that men will kill them. My mother could have an acid tongue, though she only used it when she perceived an injustice or smelt hypocrisy. 2 examples illustrate this. I was a child, maybe 12, washing up after dinner. A plate slipped my grasp and smashed. My father, sitting at the table, sighed his irritation. My mother's response was instantaneous and withering. "You're an intelligent man. So you know full well that it's only those who actually do the washing up who can accidentally break something." The second incident took place in Naples. I was a teenager at the time, and it was our last day in that vat of poverty, antiquity, extravagance, beauty, and grime. We had visited a museum in the morning and had an hour to kill before we were due to catch a bus to the airport. My mother spotted a limping kitten and, with the aid of some scraps, lured it to her lap. "I think its leg's broken," she said. "It needs a vet." "We haven't time." "Follow me." And with the kitten clasped to her breast, and me struggling behind with 2 cases, she wove along the pavement and into the nearest church. After the mayhem of the street, it seemed blessedly cool inside, dark, quiet, mystical, the air heady with incense, candles flickering in side altars, and saints reaching out to bless us as we advanced. As did a priest, who towered over my mother, and he wasn't happy. "Mi dispiace, questo è un spazio sacro. Gli animali non erano ammessi qui." "I'm sorry, this is sacred space. Animals aren't allowed in here." My mother explained our predicament. "She needs a vet and we have a plane to catch." "I'm sorry. That's none of my business." "None of your business?" "No." My mother despised organised religions, believing them to have been concocted by men to subjugate women, but she had no qualms about employing superstition to further her cause. She pointed at a life-size model of St. Francis. "That holy saint," she cried, "is ashamed of you. He's here now, and he's watching, and he tells me that he's not sure you're fit to hold your office." She then thrust the kitten into the priest's arms, and we hurried out before he could recover his composure. My mother was now in her early 60s and very short-sighted. She wore pebble-thick glasses and spoke Italian in a thick Hungarian accent. Additionally, she stood only 5 foot 3 inches tall. Besides, She was a woman. The priest never knew what hit him. After the war, my father's career assumed an ascending trajectory once he joined the British Council. But before then, it had been haphazard. In 1937, he lectured on Lord Byron in Breslau University. Being close to the Polish border, it was already seething with nationalistic fervour, especially when the man who promised miracles and to make Germany great again purred through town in his Mercedes-Benz. On returning to England, my father worked for the German department of University College London, and then briefly, before working for the BBC, he had been a spy in Nazi Berlin. During the war, Broadcasting House was a dangerous place. Bombs killed some of my father's colleagues, yet it pleased him to recall what fun it had been to stalk its corridor. You never knew who you'd spot. It could be Noel Coward or J.B. Priestley or Charles de Gaulle. I probably queued up behind George Orwell for treacle pudding and custard. Like Orwell, my father's workplace was behind a microphone. The BBC utilised his impeccable German, and his responsibility was grave: to broadcast to the enemy, to alert them to the fact that Hitler was leading Germany and Europe towards catastrophe. My father knew that ordinary Germans were not the enemy, that Goebbels had bamboozled the world with orchestrated rallies and highly edited films. He was uniquely well placed to know this because, just days before war broke out, he was one of 10 spies risking their lives in the Third Reich. My father was working for Combined Operations, a branch of military intelligence overseen by Lord Louis Mountbatten. His immediate line manager was the educationalist Geoffrey Pyke. Pyke's tragic life story and details of the mission on which he dispatched my father is well documented in Henry Hemings's book Churchill's Iceman, the true story of Geoffrey Pyke, genius, fugitive, spy. My father's job was to do what Keats advised poets to do, to become a chameleon, to blend in and disappear, to arrive as a tourist, but then camouflaged with a German hat, German cigarettes, German matches and a local paper, and given to muttering, "Blutig, Hölle, nicht wieder, bloody hell, not again," to become that stranger you might accept a beer from before sharing your true feelings about Big Brother's use of state-sponsored terrorism to control every aspect of your life. The dystopian hell Orwell depicted in 1984 mirrored the reality of Germany in 1939, a world where thought crime was a capital offence, and where your next-door neighbour, or even their children, might be members of the thought police. Pyke's idea was simple: to conduct a Gallup poll to ascertain what the German public's real feelings were, and then to humiliate Hitler with his findings. The calamitous march of events interrupted his plan, and my father fled Germany in a sealed train just days before war was declared. As he sped west, SS Gruppenführer Reinhard Heydrich, the sociopath Hitler referred to as the man with the iron heart, was mulling over means of persuading the world's press that the imminent invasion of Poland was, in reality, an act of self-defence and a legitimate response to Poland's invasion of Germany.
Listen up, chaps. Here's an idea. How about we dress some Jews in Polish army uniforms? A couple of truckloads should do. And I think I know where to get them. Then we shoot them dump their bodies inside our border, cut some wire, fire off a few rounds, and, no, hear me out, we sent for reporters with cameras. There we have it, proof positive of a Polish attack.
While Heydrich was fine-tuning his plan, what was foremost in my father's mind was that, according to the polls he and his fellow spies had conducted, even as late as in September 1939, 65% of the Germans rejected anti-Semitism, and 84% answered no when asked if the prospect of Lebensraum, or living space, was worth another war. That was Dr. Goebbels' diabolical achievement. He convinced the world that Hitler was revered in Germany, when in truth the majority of its citizens loathed and were terrified of him. At close of day, I dip into Zen in English literature and the Oriental classics. When you hear what Professor R.H. Blyth has to say about sentient beings, bear in mind that he wrote this book during the Second World War, when a prisoner of the Japanese. I came through Buddhism to Zen by virtue of my love of animals. My love of animals is like Wordsworth's love of mountains, Bashow's love of the moon and cherry blossoms, but above all, like Christ's love of men and women, for it embraces without effort or self-consciousness the most snaggled-toothed dogs, slit-eared cats, snakes, lice and bedbugs, stopping short, unfortunately, at intestinal worms. Which begs the question at the end of the day, why on earth didn't Margaret Thatcher do all in her power to ban the ivory trade? Didn't she understand how extraordinary these creatures are? Didn't she know that John Donne referred to elephants as nature's great masterpiece? Didn't she appreciate that they are social beings and shed tears when distressed? Didn't she know that elephants love reunions, that they recognize one another even after years of separation, and that they greet each other with loud, boisterous joy? More astonishing still, their grunts are differentiated. Elephants call one another by their names. Perhaps the Iron Lady would have behaved differently if, as a child, someone had read to her at least one section from the history of the Four-Footed Beasts by Edward Topsell. Relying on the authority of sundry learned men, Topsell's 1607 bestiary included mythological creatures such as the Gorgon, the Sphinx, dragons and unicorns. But nevertheless, he came to the conclusion that there is no creature among all the beasts of the world which hath so great and ample demonstration of the power and wisdom of Almighty God as the elephant.